Okay.
Good morning. Or good afternoon. Today is February 16th, 2022, and my name is Sandra Lafke Carlson. I'm here at the Tualatin Heritage Center in Tualatin, Oregon, with Ross Baker from the Tualatin Historical Society. And we are joined by Cheryl Laird, who is here. She's also a Tualatin person, and she has stories to tell. And so welcome, Cheryl. Thank you for coming today and being willing to tell your story.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate it.
Shall we start from the beginning, where you were born, where you grew up, your childhood?
That's great. So I'm from Eugene, Oregon. I've lived there basically my whole life. I was actually adopted from Korea when I was 4 months old. I was left on a doorstep of a church, so I don't know anything about my birth parents. I was fortunate to have been adopted. My parents were just finishing grad school in Texas when they got the call that, hey, we have an infant flying over on the plane. They'll meet you in Seattle. And so they packed up, literally I think they had maybe a week to pack everything up from their house, make the cross-country journey. They stopped off in Ashland because that's where both of their parents lived. They dropped off their U-Haul and then drove up to Seattle and met me at the airport. Obviously I don't remember anything about this time, but I do remember my mom saying, you know, I had a mess of hair. And the formula that they had me on in Korea, there was not at the time a soy formula in Oregon. And so she said, you would cry and cry when we would try to feed you the formula that they had. And we just didn't know what was wrong. We would check your diaper, we, you know, make sure everything was okay. And then they realized I would just refuse to eat or drink.
Oh.
And so they had to, you know, reach out to the doctor, find out, hey, this is what she was on. Is there something that's similar that we can get? And that was, you know, almost 50 years ago. So it was very different than all the options that we have now. So,
Yes.
So we lived in Eugene, and then 1 year later, they had my sister Lisa. Both of our birthdays are in June. And then 18 months later, they had my sister Janice. And then they decided that they wanted to adopt again. And they chose a boy who was 3.5 years old, who was living in an orphanage at the time. And we corresponded with our contacts over in Korea. He was actually one of the older kids in the orphanage at 3.5. They sent us a picture, and I remember this distinctly. His head was shaved because of lice. Barefoot, none of his clothes fit, he had scabs all over his body, kind of a big round head and a small frame. And so we would send him pictures, and I know he didn't understand anything that was going on at the time. And so when we got the call that he was coming over, we were so excited, and I remember all of us got to choose a stuffed animal to bring him at the airport. And when he got off the plane, we all just kind of rushed at him because we were excited, like, this is our brother. And I'm sure he was absolutely terrified. Not only was he on a long plane ride, now he's being thrust into this group of people that he doesn't know. Nobody looks like him, we don't speak his language. He's like, what is going on? But I just remember that evening, and then when we got him home, my dad stayed up all night because of the time difference. And I think that Brian is my brother. He had never had his own bed, and so for him to have a bed, he didn't know what to do with it. It was just a completely different lifestyle than what he'd grown up knowing. And so,
And how old were you at the time?
I was 8 years old.
Okay.
And so my mom is a speech pathologist, and to her credit, she did an amazing job trying to teach someone who is normally in preschool in the US, how to speak our language, colors, food, clothing items, just basic animals, vehicles, buildings, everything that you kind of grow up teaching your kids when they are ready for preschool, he just had to start from scratch.
Mhm.
So that took a lot of time and energy and dedication on her part, also while trying to take care of us three girls. And I remember during meals, my brother would sit with his arm around his food and his face really close to the table and just basically just shovel the food in, because I'm guessing at the orphanage, they didn't have very much, and if you got, whatever you got was yours, and if you didn't eat it quickly, someone else was going to take it.
Sure, yeah.
And so, you know, completely different palates, types of food that we eat versus over in Korea, and then vowels, sounding things out, trying to enunciate. So it was, I just remember this was such a pivotal time for all of us, but especially for him, just trying to absorb and remember and take in everything that was coming at him. So,
and a different experience from yours, because
very
you don't
different.
remember that time, you were so young.
Yeah, very different.
So,
So I would like to say that we were kind of like the Little House on the Prairie family. We made everything from scratch. All of our food, my mom would sew clothes, we grew vegetables and fruit, we had a grain mill, so we grind our own wheat into flour.
did you live on a farm?
Oh no, we were right there.
Right there in Eugene?
Right there in Eugene. But I think, you know, only my dad was working at the time, and he was a CPA, because my mom was staying home with the 4 kids, and so they just wanted to stretch the dollar as much as they could, and that was the easiest way for them to be able to do that. So I just remember in school, I was the only kid in elementary school who had whole wheat bread. All my other friends had, you know, the white bread, like the Wonder Bread. I was like, I was so jealous. And I remember one time for Bluebirds, we got to go on a trip to Williams Bakery, and I was thrilled because at the end, all the girls got their own loaf of bread. And I thought, oh my God, this is my one chance to get white bread. So I came home, and I know I was bragging to my sisters and my brother. I'm like, I got white bread. And they asked me for some, and I think I gave them each one slice, but the rest of the loaf was for me. So I grew up, you know, we had a really great childhood. We lived in a cul-de-sac, so we were always outside playing. The 4 of us, it still is safe, but Eugene was very safe at the time. I felt we were always outside, running around the neighborhood with other families in the cul-de-sac, running up and down the streets, riding bikes. So that was all really good. And
But didn't you have a lot to do, because your family, you made a lot of the things that you used and ground your flour and so forth. So did you, as a member of the family, have a lot to do?
I don't remember us having an exorbitant amount of chores or anything of that nature. We all contributed to helping with meals. And I remember when we got to, I think, 4th or 5th grade, my mom decided that she was going to go back to work part-time. And so during the summers, we decided that, you know, each of us 4 kids would choose one day out of the week to make dinner for the whole family. We would plan the menu, we'd write down the ingredients that we would need, my mom would get the groceries, and then we have to plan the timing, you know, how long was it going to take. And this is such an important skill. I look back now because all of us really enjoy working in the kitchen. We can make great meals from scratch. And some of them, I will say, some of my concoctions were not overly well received. Somehow I thought, you know, sloppy joes, you just get some raw hamburger and throw in a can of tomato soup and voila, there's your meal. But so it was also kind of a trial and error, but it was really good for us to learn that even though we did grow a lot of our own food, kind of the process that goes into preparing a meal for 6 people every night, sometimes the hardest part is coming up with what you want to make. I still struggle with this sometimes. Like, what are we going to have for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
I don't know, what's in the freezer? But if you plan it out, then you tend to make healthier choices, and you make one trip to the grocery store instead of 2 or 3. So all of these things kind of play in. And plus, you, I think, appreciate when you make the food, you enjoy it more.
Right. So what a good learning that you had.
It really was.
Education
And maybe at the
learning.
time, we're like, none of our friends have to do this, it's not fair. But looking back, this gave us lifelong skills that obviously we still use today. So very, very beneficial.
So, so then you went to college?
So I went to Sheldon High School. I ran track and field. I ended up going to school at Southern Oregon State College. It was a state college at the time, now it's a university. Both of my parents grew up in Ashland, Oregon. They knew each other in elementary school. Both of their fathers were professors at the college, and at that time it was Southern Oregon College. That's how far back it goes. And they were best friends. So my parents' parents would go on trips together, they would travel together over to Europe, go camping. So every holiday that we had, we'd go down to Ashland because, you know, we get to see both sets of grandparents. It was really easy. And my dad's brother and his family also lived there, and their kids were the closest in age to us. So in Ashland, I don't know if you know very much about Southern Oregon and Ashland.
Oh, I love
Shakespeare and the parks, and it's just kind of this wonderful small town feel, right? I remember the 4th of July parades through town, everything shuts down, and all the parades and the picnics and the band concerts, and then during the holidays, all the lights that they celebrate. So it was just, it made sense to me to go to college at SOC because it was so familiar with me. Not really carrying on a tradition, I didn't feel that pressure. But it was far enough away from home, but still in state. So it felt very, very comfortable and very welcoming. And I know that my grandparents appreciated seeing me every once in a while as well. So, and as a college student, it's kind of nice to go there and have a home cooked meal.
Yes. Maybe take your laundry.
Maybe on 1 or 2 occasions.
And
so that was really good.
Did you know right away what you wanted to study in college?
I think when I graduated high school, I wanted to do marketing of some sort. Business marketing, I think is what I said. But really, when you're 17 or 18, you don't know what you want to do. And you shouldn't know what you want to do for the rest of your life. And this is what I try and share with students now when I have opportunities to speak. Right, you don't have to have everything planned out. Don't feel pressure to go to a specific school because that's the tradition, or our family's always gone here, and that, you know, you need to carry on the tradition. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right fit for you. Don't go to the same college as your best friend thinking you guys are going to be roommates. That's, you know, also something that I think sometimes students tend to think it's kind of, you know, a continuation from high school, but this is your chance to kind of start fresh and start new and experience things that you haven't had the opportunity to before. And it's okay, and it's scary, and it's supposed to feel that way. Kind of a little scared, excitement for the unknown. These are all really good feelings to go through. So, so I ended up studying at the end communications and psychology, which coincidentally I use every single day in my position. Working with engineers, I mean, I love engineers, but bless their hearts with their white socks and their dark pants and dark shoes and no belt. I mean, love them, but and their communication style is also a little different. So it's just, it's been good. It's been good. I think they're used to me now. I think at first I kind of intimidated them. I think some of them honestly had never spoken to a female before. They didn't know how to react around me. I'm like, I'm just one of the guys, so yeah.
Well, did you go right from college to working with engineers?
So when I finished school, I took some time off. I actually was a nanny in Ashland for a family for about 3 years, which was, again, a really good experience, something that I, again, didn't think that was kind of in my repertoire. But I did learn a lot. They were a great family. I was able to travel with them, kind of watch the kids grow up. And then the person that I was dating at the time got a job at Novella Systems in San Jose, California. So we ended up moving down to Silicon Valley in 1998. And it was quite a change from anything that I had known or experienced coming from smaller towns in Oregon. The price of things was astronomical, even at that time. I think we were in a one-bedroom, it was a 700 square foot apartment, and at the time the rent was $1,600. And it was, it was just the basics. So, and traffic, I just thought, wow, these people are crazy. We always, we kind of, as Oregonians, we joke, oh, we can always tell when a California comes up, and, we can just tell how they drive. And I'm like, wow, it is real. But again, it was such a good eye-opening experience, a real growth opportunity for me. I ended up applying for a position at Novelis, and through their temp agency, and I got hired on as a corporate receptionist, probably in about 1999, and it was a really busy time, just because it was during the whole .com craze. Silicon Valley was growing exponentially. I remember Cisco Systems was literally taking over everything. They had hotels and streets named after them. It was quite aggressive with recruiting and trying to bring people on at that time. So when I was a receptionist, I got to meet all of the executives, which again, I didn't feel intimidated because I saw them every day. I'd see them come in with their coffee and their Wall Street Journal tucked under their arm, and they would say good morning. They were people just like myself, but at a much higher level. And so I got to see kind of that side of them, not the side of them, in the executive meetings and the board meetings where, they're kind of more direct. So I got to see, I guess I would say, kind of maybe a softer side to them, which made them more relatable. And after 6 months, I was converted to become an RFT, which is a regular full-time employee. And I started working in human resources. So again, as I said, it was during the whole .com craze, and so we were hiring between 30 and 35 new hires every week, which was great. It was very fast-paced. And I just remember calling my parents one weekend and saying, we have all these new hires, new college grads coming in. They're making 6-figure salaries right off the bat. They have huge sign-on bonuses, all this stock. They're driving around in their little leased BMWs, and I'm kind of puttering around in my Saturn. I'm this little girl from Eugene. I said, I don't fit in here. It was all still very foreign to me. And I stuck it out for 3 years, and it was, again, a really good experience. At that time, we ended up transferring our largest business unit, which was PECVD, which is the Plasma Enhanced Chemical Vapor Deposition Group, up to Tualatin. And so I interviewed for a position in that organization, and I got it. So I was able to move back home, which was great. I was actually in the Wilsonville, Oregon site for a year while the Tualatin campus was being finished. So for the first half of the day, I would be the receptionist, and then the second half of the day, I would support PECVD. So again, I got to learn a whole different part of the company. Our electrophil saber group was in Wilsonville at the time, and so that was, I got to meet, a lot of the key players there, many of whom are still here.
Really?
I will share that my brother actually also works at Lam Research, and he is an electrical engineer, and he was in the saber group. He started around the same time that I did, and that group is very, very tight and close-knit. In a really good way, say it's kind of like the mafia, right? Nobody leaves, nobody comes in. It's very much a family, that group. So it's really neat to see that, 25 years later, a lot of them are still there. Yeah. So I worked in the product group for 10 years, and It was very much customer facing at that time. And I remember we would have our, top customers come. They were used to being, kind of wine and dined in Silicon Valley because it was headquarters and everybody, that was the place to be, Silicon Valley, right? And then they would come and they'd fly out here to Tualatin, Oregon. And then they're like, we don't even know where this is. I'm like, we're the state right above California. And they would drive around, we're like, you guys are in the middle of a filbert orchard in a residential area. There are all these neighborhoods, and it just didn't quite compute with them sometimes. But we are a large campus. We're the largest employer in Tualatin. And to date, I think that we have over 4,000 people that work on our sites, and we do continue to grow. So the 10 years that I had in the product group, really I learned so much more about our tools, our customers, our install base, what it is that they were looking for. I was pretty much surrounded by PhDs and high-level, wicked smart people. And it was a really, again, I always say this, eye-opening, but I had never been exposed to being around people of that level before, so I tried to take it in, and I know that I didn't understand all of their jargon or what they were trying to tell me. I'm like, you gotta dumb it down a little bit for us non-engineers. But it was a really good time. It was a really great 10 years. And then I had the opportunity to go over to global operations, which was a completely different side of the company that I had not been exposed to before. I thought, this is a great opportunity for me to learn a completely different side of the business. It was also a little scary because I hadn't really been over to our manufacturing building, which is on the same campus. I'd only been over there maybe twice. So I almost got lost going over our sky bridge. Like, I don't know which door to go through. It was, 2 levels, I'm going from 4. So anyway, I found my way, and it has been such a blessing. And the folks that I get to work with on the manufacturing floor that I support, they are so real. These are my folks who, maybe they don't have the highest education level. They have tattoos, piercings, shorts that are a little low sometimes, but they are very, very real. And I just appreciate it. They are the hardest working, the most giving. When we have our annual Deliver Joy and we collect donations to provide to the Tualatin Resource Center, the folks on the manufacturing side would donate the most, even though their salaries were the least.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that it really warms my heart. Like, they're just so real, and they care, and they're not presumptuous. They don't look down or snub anybody. And so I really relate to them, and I think it makes me fight even harder for them when it comes to certain things that maybe they're not aware of or they haven't been informed about. So just making sure that they have all the opportunities so they can progress throughout the company.
So in Lam Research as a corporation does a lot of good in the community, it sounds like.
They're a very philanthropic company, and it's when Novellus was acquired by Lam, it was a pretty scary year for us, because when Novellus would acquire a company, we were pretty ruthless, and we would say, we're just acquiring you for your technology. We don't care about the people side as much, and it was, so I would say a large percentage of their workforce was let go. And so to be on the receiving end of that was very humbling. And a lot of us, I'm not gonna lie, we were kind of scared shitless. We're like, because we had seen this happen throughout the years. And then to have it happen to us, we're like, oh my gosh, it's karma. What goes around comes around, and it's gonna be our turn now. And what's that gonna mean? We aren't at headquarters. We're a field office. And so thankfully, it was exactly the opposite of what we thought that whole process was going to entail. So Lam Research, from the CEO down, embraced novellas, the employees. This company has core values, which we had never had before. There was so much respect and communication that we knew throughout the entire process, what was happening, the reasons behind. There was a lot of reassuring. You guys are a large part of the community up here. We are going to continue to grow. So that was really, I think, just took a huge weight off of us, knowing that when we still had our jobs, and this company, they actually do care, and they say what they're going to do. So it's very refreshing, and just such a positive experience if you have to go through an acquisition.
Now they're involved with the STEM and the STEAM programs in the schools. How are they involved?
Correct. So Lam has given a donation grant to the Tualatin School District in the past, where we can connect with our mobile makerspace and be able to provide opportunities that our middle schoolers probably wouldn't have been exposed to in the past, where a teacher can go and sign up online and say, I'd like my math class or whatever class I am teaching to be exposed to this type of engineering, or we're learning a certain part of a math subject, and if we can somehow engage the students to make it more interactive or more real, where they feel connected, we can bring the mobile makerspace to the classroom with our volunteers and set things up and engage the students.
And what is the mobile makerspace?
So during the conceptual phases, it was, my understanding, it was kind of a bus. I don't know if we got all the funding to make the bus happen, but there are, I guess, what's the best way to say it? My understanding is that there are kind of boxes that have all of the equipment, all of the material that you need, and then the teacher can go online, sign up with their school, their grade, the subject, the time, and then our volunteers will be able to go deliver that material into the classroom and work with the students and the teachers.
That's wonderful.
So we'd like to eventually go down to the elementary schools and start kind of that energy and being able to ignite that spark in students even younger, because if we can start them on a path earlier, the likelihood of them entering into a STEM or STEAM field is that much higher.
Mm-hmm. And then women in engineering?
Women in engineering. So this is, again, one of our resource groups on campus, employee resource groups. And we have quite a few women. You don't have to be an engineer by trade. It's open to any female or male. And they meet, I believe they meet monthly to talk about different opportunities in our community, whether it's partnering. I believe that in the past we've partnered with OMSI for some events, certainly with our local high schools, our first robotics teams. So we just open it up to volunteers if someone's available on a Saturday, if someone can go during an evening down to OMSI and work, if that works better with their schedule. So it's just kind of a forum where you feel supported by your peers. We have had women, talk about their career, how they got started at Lam, mentorship programs, that's a big part of it as well. And then in the past, when the chamber has hosted, engineering sessions for our high schoolers, usually it was in person. The last few years, obviously, it's been virtual, but we've had the opportunity to have some of our women in engineering come and speak, on Zoom, but to these, mostly it's girls, about what they studied when they were in school, how they got started at Lam, what they do now, their their career progression, what they wish that they had known when they were in high school, what classes they think really benefited them in real time, in the real world, and what classes, like, it's a nice to have, but you don't have to focus entirely on, this one area. It's better to have kind of a broader breadth. So it's nice to be able to share with them, this, a lot of times they're not that much older than the students, and so we try and make it more relatable to them. And then I also share, being a non-engineer, that you don't have to go into a STEM or STEAM related field to be successful. There are a lot of different opportunities at many companies. Lam is just one of them. And success looks different for everybody at different points in your life. And as I said earlier, you don't have to go the traditional 4-year college route. When I was in high school, that was pretty much it. Your only option, right? A 4-year or a 2-year. Like now you have those options. You have military, you have trade school, directly going into the workforce. A lot of companies now also will pay for your education, which is a huge incentive. Because again, not everybody knows what they want to do at 17 or 18. So why are you going to go to school for 4 years and study something that you think, maybe you feel pressured by family or friends, and it ends up being not something that you're passionate about? You move back home, can't find a job, and then you're not happy, your parents certainly aren't happy. And if you realize, maybe it wasn't for me, maybe I, want to be a welder. There's a huge demand for this industry right now. And they're very successful. And so that's what I try and share with students. And I think the students get it more than the parents and the counselors. It's trying to get through to them. Because, and I understand as a parent, we all just want our kids to be happy and healthy and successful and be able to be contributing members of society, right? That's great. And I think in our heads, we sometimes think, oh, in order for that to happen, you need to have a college degree. And I think that, especially since the pandemic, a lot of companies are looking at, do we really need that to be able to hire people to do these roles? Well, some certainly, yes, not all. And so I just want students to know that there are opportunities. You can be successful in whatever field, whatever your passion is. So that's what I try and share with them.
Good information, good messages to give to students. And you are a parent. You mentioned his son.
Yes.
That you have.
He's in high school right now. He's a freshman. And so it's definitely been a struggle going from pandemic, where the students learned online for a year plus. And when I say learn, I use that term very loosely because I really don't think they learned a darn thing, unfortunately. And I know the struggles that the teachers went through and the educators and the families and the students. It was just, it's a lost year, basically. And we don't know kind of the longer term effects on the students, right? Their mental health, their emotional well-being. It really takes a toll. So to go from online learning for a year to high school, going into high school is already a big change. I think it was kind of a double whammy for all of the students going from transitioning from 8th grade online to in-person high school. And then trying to emphasize that everything in high school counts, but not put so much pressure on the kids that they feel completely stressed out and they don't know how to handle it, because you've missed a year of learning from 8th grade. They didn't do standardized testing. They just, nothing happened for the previous year. So I know that they felt like they were behind. They were, I think, even up until maybe a week before school started, we didn't know for sure that people were going to be able to go back to in-person learning. There was a lot of trepidation, a lot of anxiety from the school district, from parents, obviously, just wanting to keep everybody safe. And what does that look like? And if we are able to have students come back, what classes are available? Do we have enough teachers and educators to be able to, share the information. So my son was placed in some classes I kind of questioned. And I thought, well, you should probably have some prerequisite classes leading up to this one, but I understood they just had to kind of plug and play kids where they could. And as a freshman, his first trimester, one of his classes was welding, intro to welding. I thought, my gosh, I mean, what better time to learn something like this, but I didn't know that this was something you were interested in. He's like, no, it's not, Mom. I'm like, but it's great, you can see if maybe it is something and you just weren't exposed to it and you didn't realize, hey, you know what, this might actually be something that I could do. Turns out it wasn't as much, but like where else are you gonna have that opportunity to learn something like this? And then he also had 3D art. Again, something that I never would have thought and he wasn't really passionate about, but he did learn something that he didn't know before. So, so things like this, I really, this is the time to do it when there aren't big consequences. If it's not something that you enjoy, it's 12 weeks and it can open your eyes and maybe it is something that you realize, oh my gosh, you know what? I never would have thought about this if I hadn't taken this one class. So.
You've also been involved with the Chamber of Commerce in Tualatin.
I have. So Novella/Lam, we've been a member with the Chamber of Commerce since 2001, I believe. I think it's a larger employer. We really like to make an impact on our community and our smaller businesses in whatever way that is the most positive for both parties involved, right? So the Friday AM networking, that's probably not for us, but our key leaders events, Celebrate Tualatin, certainly. Anytime there's big initiatives that are on the ballot that we need to know about, right now with the tolling on 205, that's a big one that's going to impact many, many people. Being involved in our community, not just giving back monetarily, which is also something that we're able to do, but learning about initiatives that are going to impact our employees, our neighbors around us, is also really important.
You were the president for a time.
I was the board chair for 2 years. It was a kind of a challenging time because we did experience COVID during one of those years, and so how do we pivot like everybody else and help our small to medium businesses, restaurants who are absolutely struggling to survive? And it was every week when they would send out updates, like, oh, this restaurant, they're gonna have to close, this one's right on the cusp, and are they gonna be able to make a comeback? And unfortunately, even though we always promote support local, there are some that will not be able to return to the life that they knew before. And it's really hard. And it's everywhere. It's not just Tualatin. But when it's places that you would frequent and you know and you care about, it does hurt. It does hurt.
So how do you see Tualatin moving into the future from here?
I think that along with many people, that our traffic and congestion issues need to be resolved. I know everybody has the same, I don't want to call it a complaint, but it's definitely an opportunity. Tualatin Sherwood Road for sure, and I know that they've started construction. It's a 2-year project, expanding down to 4 lanes and then 99 and down to Roy Rogers. Martinazzi, again, sometimes it's literally taken me from Lam to the chamber office 5 iterations to turn up the light here.
Oh.
And so we do have a cafe on site at Lam, which has greatly helped the amount of traffic where people before would either have to bring their lunch or they'd have to go off site to buy lunch back, pre-COVID. And, when you only have an hour, or our manufacturing team, they have even shorter amount of time, they're not able to go get food and be back in that amount of time, just due to traffic. And so, these challenges obviously it's something that impacts everybody, and it's only growing. One, because we're hiring so many people, and we haven't been able to expand this entire time, our roads and our infrastructure. So it's been nice seeing, Cabela's go in and new seasons, Bridgeport, that's all new. I will say I'm so glad that Cabela's is there now. I remember telling our interview candidates, and this is saying, okay, well, I'm gonna send you directions to get to the office. You're gonna take exit 289, and when you see the jiggle sign, that's where you turn. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Thank you, City of Tualatin, for putting in a Cabela's, because it's so much nicer now being able to say, turn at Cabela's.
Yes. And any other things you want to say about?
Well, Lam has our core value scholarship that we offer at all of our sites. It's $10,000 for a graduating high school senior. Anybody is eligible to apply. It is a rather rigorous application form. And I've had the honor for the last 5 years to be on the selection committee. And I remember telling my boss, Mike, I'm like, these students are phenomenal. They give me hope that when I retire, I'm gonna have Social Security. I could not be a high school student right now. The things that they have to deal with and navigate, and just to survive. And I'm like, it is so competitive. And these kids are over 4.0 GPA, and they're in 3 different varsity sports that they letter in, and they work part-time, and they volunteer, and the list goes on and on. And with their accomplishments, and during the summer, oh, I went to Bosnia, and I worked in a third world country because I want to go into nursing. Like, the opportunities that these kids have is mind-blowing. I'm like, my gosh. But it just makes me smile. There are some that make me cry, honestly. But the impact that I know that these students are going to have, whether they come to work at Lam, whether they go work at UPS, or they end up in the hospital at Legacy, I know that they are going to make an impact. So to be able to choose, and it's hard to choose just one, but this literally is life-changing for these students, for their families, and to hear, what I really enjoy is when they graduate from college, to know what they ended up pursuing. And sometimes they will come back and they'll do internships at Lam, and they will end up working for us full-time. And that, I think, is like kind of the whole package, right? Success story. And that's the reason why I do it. It's just to know that you have the ability to change somebody's life for the better. I've had fathers at graduation crying, saying how much this means, because if they hadn't gotten the scholarship, their daughter wouldn't have been able to go to school. And so that is real, that hits home.
What a gift.
It really is. So the fact that Lam does this, again, it's just another reason why it's such a great company to work for, and our leaders really do practice what they say, and the core values are everything. So very, very fortunate.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Sandra. This was such a pleasure.
Oh, yes. And what an amazing life that you've had, and then working for this company. And I knew very little about Lam before. I don't live in Tualatin now, but come frequently. But
so I've been there for 22 years now.
22 years. Okay.
And
So
if luck would have it, I will retire from there, and I always say, oh, when I'm gone, then I'm gonna write a book, and it's gonna be a bestseller. I have so many stories.